State media reported a 5.9 magnitude earthquake hit northwestern Tanzania. 11 people were killed and dozens were left injured. According to Daily News Tanzania, at least 192 people were injured when the quake struck near Nusunga town Saturday. The U.S. Geological Survey said it hit near the shore of Lake Victoria. The tremors rippled as far as western Kenya and parts of Uganda. Both countries share the waters of Lake Victoria.
Growing tension tonight after North Korea tested its most powerful nuclear weapon yet. President Obama has promised, quote, serious consequences, and the United Nations Security Council has condemned the test as a, quote, brazen breach of resolutions.
North Korea says it tested a powerful nuclear warhead that could be mounted on a ballistic missile at its main nuclear site overnight. The test triggered a magnitude 5.3 tremor. Officials from South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. quickly condemned the test, the White House calling it a grave threat to regional security.
I think it's fair to say that China, Russia, the United States, everybody shares concerns, but we're trying still to monitor to find out precisely what took place.
President Obama was briefed on the incident as he traveled home from his trip to Asia. In a statement, he said the United States does not and never will accept North Korea as a nuclear state. The president says North Korea's test would be met with serious consequences.
Every time we condemn them, they come back at us with another test.
Just this week, the country launched 3 missiles while China hosted world leaders at the G20 summit. Officials say the nuclear test not only violates UN Security Council resolutions, but also raises concerns that the communist nation is a step closer to building a nuclear warhead capable of reaching the U.S.
North Korea says the test is in response to international sanctions and U.S. hostility in the region last month. The U.S. and South Korea held joint military exercises.
The world's most powerful navies, that of the United States, Russia, and China, are set to begin large-scale exercises in Asia starting Monday. China and Russia will hold their joint maneuvers in the South China Sea, while the U.S. drill will take place near Guam in the Western Pacific. There are clear undertones of countering the influence of the United States in the region, where Beijing has territorial disputes with its neighbors. According to China's defense ministry, the exercise will include, among other activities, quote, island taking. U.S. drill, named Valiant Shield, will involve 180 aircraft and some 18,000 personnel, led by the aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan, based out of Japan.
In a massive display of military might, Russia staged one of its biggest military drills ever in the Crimea Peninsula, complete with missiles and rocket launchers. Despite the show of force, Russia is assuring observers that the drills were planned well in advance and were not meant to provoke Moscow's enemies. Russian Defense Ministry press spokesman General Igor Konashenkov called the claims of antagonization absolute nonsense when speaking to journalists at the Opuk training ground in Crimea. Russia annexation of the Ukraine kicked off a confrontation with the West and the ongoing war in eastern Ukraine.
The clashes between police and protesters in 2 different districts in Indian-controlled Kashmir have left 2 people dead and 25 others wounded. One protester was killed during a march in a village in Shopian district, and the other lost his life as violence erupted in a rally in Anantnag district. A curfew and a series of communication blackouts have failed to stop weeks of protests against Indian rule. The latest wave of violence erupted after a popular pro-independence leader was killed by security forces on July 8th. At least 70 people have been killed and 6,000 injured in the ensuing clashes. Kashmir is divided between India and Pakistan and is claimed by both. Well, to discuss that further, we're now joined by Farhana Ghazi, who is the author of Secrets of the Kashmir Valley, and she's joining us live now via Skype from Washington. Thanks very much for joining us. We've been talking about violence in Indian-administered Kashmir for a while now. Where do you feel it stands right now? Is this something that's going to die down at this point?
Well, every day, as you rightfully reported, every day a child is dying because of the Indian security forces' use of pellet guns. And so hundreds of children have been blinded by what's been called a modern weapon, but which personally should be banned by the international community. So no, the violence continues to inflame the public. Protests continue to happen every day, and protesters will not stop until their demands have been met, which is the right to self-determination.
Authorities in Singapore say it is unclear yet if the Zika virus strain detected in the country can cause the same birth defects and other disorders linked to the Zika outbreak in Latin America. A DNA analysis of the virus samples in Singapore revealed slight differences compared to the Latin American strains. It was not clear yet what the differences mean in terms of the severity of the disease. The World Health Organization says more research is needed to determine the effects of the different Zika strains. As of Thursday, Singapore has confirmed 292 Zika cases, including 2 pregnant women.
The protesters marching through the streets of Thessaloniki were beating drums and chanting anti-government slogans. Among them were a large number of firefighters as well as Coast Guard and police officers who were demonstrating against government cuts to public services. The rally was held in the center of the city where Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras was delivering a speech on the state of the nation's economy. He said years of economic slowdown in the country are coming to an end and promised to boost economic.
8-year-old boy has had a restraining order filed against him.
His mother says he's not allowed to attend school or leave his home without risking arrest. Matt Cesny from our St. Louis CBS affiliate KMOV explains.
8-year-old Peyton Whitehead started his day like any other at Hillsborough Elementary School until a sheriff's deputy showed up and had him removed from class, serving the 3rd grader with what's called an ex parte order of protection, basically telling him to stay away from the kids who live a couple doors from him.
The cop told me that my son is not allowed to attend school now.
He can't even go back to his elementary school.
He cannot go to school.
Because of that order?
Yes.
So what are you going to do?
I don't know what to do. I have to wait till a court date.
The neighbor who filed the court order says he was surprised the judge signed off on the order against the 8-year-old, but he also adds he took action because of threats the 8-year-old made against his children. So now Peyton Whitehead is getting a legal lesson from Jefferson County that's way beyond the 3rd grade, essentially ordering him to stay home.
He explained that if he did ever have any contact with them as he's riding his bicycle or anything like that, that they would have to come and put handcuffs on him and put him in juvenile.
Your 8-year-old son?
My 8-year-old son, they would arrest.
A man and a woman overdosed on heroin with a 4-year-old child in the back seat and were arrested. The pictures an Ohio Police Department released Thursday are shocking, but they're just one example of a scary national trend. Ohio is among 14 states where heroin overdose rates rose significantly from 2013 to 2014. That's the most recent data available. National data shows the number of deaths from heroin overdoses in 2014 was at more than 10,500. A decade earlier, there were around 1,900. But as the numbers rise, several states and Congress have tried to combat the issue with legislation, but it's uncertain how effective that will be. As for the couple in the photos, they're each facing criminal charges, including child endangerment. A neighbor is taking care of the 4-year-old after Child Services stepped in. Anti-drug abuse organizations warn kids in situations like this one are more likely to become.
What if our skin was our interface to virtual reality? This is the question a group of graduate students at London's Royal College of Art have explored in their Skin-to-Face project. It's a skin suit which allows the user to go from the physical to the virtual world by feeling invisible objects.
Virtual experiences so far are quite limited to sound and vision, but they're not fully immersive because you don't actually get to feel things. And in the real world, skin is our interface to everything.
The prototype sleeve creates this sensory experience through custom-made moving magnet actuators which are embedded in the garment. When exposed to different sounds, they create a varying electromagnetic field, which in turn produces varying sensations on the skin. For example, a recorded sound such as knocking on wood can be played onto skin via the actuators.
So it's actually moving magnets that are touching the skin, but with that you can then play different complex sound waves, different recordings, which gives quite an interesting effect.
The colourful patches on the sleeve are then tracked in 3D space by a colour tracking camera. This allows control over every individual actuator based on its assigned colour code. And the team hope to evolve Skin-to-Face into a much more immersive experience with possible further applications too.
I think our next ambition would be to try and get it so that you could actually interact two ways with things. So you could, touch something and then do something that would have an effect on whatever it was. I think we see a lot of different applications for this. Like our first thought was obviously gaming and entertainment, but there could eventually be, medical applications and all sorts of other things. So kind of seeing where the interest lies.
Skin to Face joins a handful of similar technologies, feeling their way into a more tactile future.